Hey everyone, it's Fox from emodels.co.uk here. Wait, you're confused, aren't you? Don't panic. Hello, right, yes, little confusion. There'll be two groups of you out there watching this video. Some of you will be from following my YouTube channel. Don't panic, this is the same video build series that you've been watching up till now. So stay with me. For those of you who are just joining me from emodels.co.uk's YouTube channel, hello, welcome, I'm Fox from modelmaking.guru, and I'm doing a little series free models. I've done a couple of builds for them before. Now this one's going to be a little different. This is not going to be a video build series. It's going to you're actually joining me in the middle of a video build series. The viewers who from my channel will know what we're building. And it's going to be something a little different for you, probably. It might not be, but it might be. What we're going to be doing, I've already built, constructed most of it and painted a model. And this little series is going to focus on weathering, advanced weathering techniques. And very kindly, the chaps at emodels.co.uk have sent me these products. How cool is that? You didn't know I could do that, did you? Right, we have some magic products here. The guys at eModels have sent me these products. If you've seen my previous videos, you'll know up to now I've used certain ways of doing weathering using things like oil paint gunk washes and chipping with knife blades. But I decided for this build, which I'll show you in a second, I'm going to do something different. I've wanted to try these for a while, so I've managed to grab myself a load of these. These are weathering products by MIG Ammo, and they can give you absolutely brilliant, fantastic results. So I'm going to try these products out. What do we have? Well, before we do that, let me show you what we're going to be building. It's not a tank, it's not a plane, it's not a car, it's not a motorbike. Hi, Tony. It is this. Yes, it's a Gunpla. If you follow me on my channel at all, you know I love Gunpla. I built it and painted it. You can see that. I've done some pre-shading. It's a snap build. It's not glued together. It's Bandai's 1/48 scale RX-78-2 Gundam. It's in their mega size range. I'll go into a little bit of history about Gunpla and Gundam and stuff while I'm doing the build, because I don't want to bore you with it now. But what we're going to be doing, I've painted it. I quickly explain what I did. Catch up for you new viewers. It was primed using Tamiya Surface Primer. Mostly white and grey. Been painted with Tamiya colours. The pre-shading was done before the colours went on over the primer, and that was using Tamiya Rubber Black. Then the painting was done, and now we're going to start on the weathering. So, let's have a look at these products. What do we have? We have a few sets. I'm not going to use all of these products, and I also apologise for saying a lot. I don't know why I'm suddenly doing that right now at the moment. It seems to be a sudden trend in my in my videos, so I do apologise. I'm not going to be using everything in these packs because I don't need everything, but each of these packs usually contains one or two of the things I need. So I have MIG Ammo weathering set for mechas. Mechas are these Gundam suits, big mechanised armour suits, that kind of thing. These are quite good generic filters and streaking grime and things like that. I have, for you armour freaks out there, I have the German tank starter set, which is a brown wash, streaking grime again, and Dunkel Gelb Aus, which is a nice paint colour. It's a dark yellow for your desert tanks. The pigment rust set. I love rust. There's nothing more fun than doing a rusty model. Now I'm not going to be doing a lot of rust on this. It's going to be very, very weathered, but it's not going to be rusty that much. But I've got some track rust, some light rust, and some medium rust. We have the Eastern Front Mud set, which, as you can imagine, is for making mud effects. I'm going to give this a try. I've never really tried doing proper thick. I've done dirt and dust and stuff like that. I've never tried proper thick gloopy mud, so we might be putting a bit of that on the feet. And last of all, engines, oil, and fuel. And here you've got engine grime, fresh engine oil, and fuel stains. These are brilliant for any shiny metallic parts, especially the ones we have on this kit. I mean, they're good for the kit anyway. But if you have, say in this case, I've got a metallic inner frame, or you're building, say, a tank or a vehicle you want to have a slightly grubby engine. These are great. There's nice, grimy, dirty colours. What I'm not going to be using, for the first time ever, if you've watched my previous videos, is one of my traditions is to use MIG's 502 Abteilung Starship Filth oil paint to do all my panel lining and greasy weathering and stuff. Not going to be using that. Or probably not. I might use a little tiny bit. I'm going to throw my normal methods away and I'm going to stick to the methods using these products. So it's going to be a first for me. What we're also going to be doing is following this, In Combat, from MIG. And it's an absolutely gorgeous book. I think eModels still have it in stock. If they have, snap it up. It's beautiful. If you're interested in not necessarily just mechas and Gundams and things like that, but any kind of armour painting, because the weathering techniques in these are brilliant. It's an illustrated guide, has lots of different builds by different people and how they've weathered them. But we're going to be working on him. We're going to be not necessarily trying to replicate this effect, this exactly, but we're going to use the techniques that he covers in this book. Now, if you're not familiar with MIG, a chap called Mig Jimenez, is a fantastic model maker. He didn't necessarily pioneer a lot of these techniques, but he kind of brought them into the spotlight for a lot of people who weren't in the know. And things like the ammo products have been kind of tailored around his techniques for, say, paint chipping and washes and streaks and stains. And he's kind of become synonymous with this sort of weathered look, armour painting, armour modelling, and he's done some beautiful work. So we're going to try and replicate the steps he lays out. I say not exactly, because I'll probably veer off here and there. So if you want to get a copy of this, eModels I think still have it in stock. It's just a really nice coffee table book anyway, and you will pick up a lot of useful tips and hints in this. So, right, let's crack on, shall we? Now you saw a picture of the model painted up and ready to roll at the start there. Just to get an idea of how big this thing is, here are the feet. How big, aren't they? Now, if you know Gunpla and Gundam at all, you'll know this is one of their mega-size kits. Very simple, designed for children, but it's simple constructions. The more fun is in the painting. Anyway, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking this piece, which is the leg, bottom half of the leg, and as you can see, it's all nicely painted up and it's being decaled and gloss varnished. You've got some nice grey tones here, but what we've not got is any definition to all these little panel lines. So that's what we're going to do. Now what I have gone ahead and done most of the panel lining in the deep grey colour, this one. As you can see here, this is a leg I've already done. So you can see here we've got nice definition on these panel lines. What we're trying to simulate basically, because this is going to be a heavily weathered vehicle, and these are vehicles by the way, they're not robots, it's got a pilot. Going to be a heavily weathered vehicle, so the techniques I'm going to show you are going to be just as applicable to tanks, planes, cars, anything you want to heavily weather. So what I'm trying to simulate here is basically crud and grime and dirt that's got into all these panel gaps. Now if you've done panel lining before, there are various different techniques. What model you're doing affects what technique. If you make Gunpla like this, you might use a Gundam marker, a fine panel lining Gundam marker. They're fine if you're not painting the model. These Bandai kits come pre-coloured, so you don't need to paint them. I have painted this one. They're fine, but if you're used to those, they'll give you a very solid colour. Now, other ways to panel line don't necessarily do that. One way I used to do it was to slather the whole piece in Starship Filth oil paint and then rub it all off and the paint will remain in the panel line. That's great, but it will tint the rest of the piece. So you'll discolour the whole thing if you take on a slight brown hue, and I didn't necessarily want to do that. You could use things like Ultimate Modelling Products washes. These are basically water and clay. They're clay based, and the technique is very, very similar to those. But we're going to be using these MIG ones, which are enamel based. Some people use pencils even for panel lining. It's fine, but you're limited on the colour. I want to use different colours, but we're going to use enamels. Enamels are great because they go on. They take about 24 hours to fully dry, and even up to then you can still go in and clean up any bits where the brush marks have come in and it all goes wrong. But we're going to do a pin wash, which is basically putting paint into the groove. If you've used other methods, say like Gundam markers or things like that, or pens or pencils, you'll be used to getting a nice solid colour. These don't always give you a very solid colour. You won't be able to see on camera, I don't think, but especially because the light's in the wrong place. But they give you, in some places it's nice and solid, and in some places a little grainy. But that's fine, because this is supposed to be crud and schmutz and dirt in the panel line. So if it's not exactly a solid colour, that's brilliant. I don't mind that. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Plus we're going to do all the weathering on top, which is going to add more gunk. So let's crack on with this. I'll go and get these parts away, and we'll start turning that into that. Okay, right, let's get this thing panel lined. Now, again, just to remind you, we're going to make it look like this. A couple of things to know before you start doing any kind of enamel weathering. This is painted with Tamiya acrylic paints. and then it has had 2 or 3 coats of gloss varnish. Now, as for gloss varnish, you can use whichever gloss varnish you're comfortable with. Ideally, make sure it's an acrylic gloss varnish. Well, actually, it has to be an acrylic gloss varnish because we're going to be using enamel thinners and they won't do anything to your acrylic gloss varnish. You can use any model making gloss varnish that you've already got. I'm personally going to be using the good old standby of Pledge multi-surface wax. You'll have seen Tony use it in his Yamaha motorbike build. My label's different because he's got the older bottle, I've got the new one. If you're in the US, it's known as Future. If you're in other parts of the world, it might be called Clear. I just personally prefer that to airbrush on. But you can use, your Humbrolls, your Vallejos, I think Tamir do their clear. You've got the spray ones, you've got loads of different ones. It doesn't really matter as long as it's an acrylic gloss varnish because it needs to be unreactive with the thinners in the enamel. So that gloss varnish will protect the decals and protect the paint underneath. So we're going to use, to start with, we're going to do 2 colours. The first one we're going to do is the deep grey, which is, if I can read the number, oh, it's rubbed off, brilliant. Well, as you can see, I've already done some because it looks really messy. Now, for some reason, I don't know why, I have no problem. I'm not like Tony. I don't spill things every 5 minutes. Sorry, Tony. But for some reason, I can't help but just get this stuff everywhere. It's not like it's a really wobbly jar. It just goes everywhere and I can't help myself. So it just makes mess. And we're also going to be using some of the thinners, AK Interactive thinners. And the good thing with this technique is you can get as messy or as neat as you want because we're going to clean it up. So I've got a nice fine brush here. So let's get that going. And what we're going to do, this is just what's called a pin wash. I'm going to get a little bit of the panel line wash on the brush. Now you can overload it if you want, and I'll show you why. Because we've gloss varnished it, it's a nice smooth surface. So what happens is, when you put your brush on the panel line, if you see this, hope you can, it will just, capillary action will make that pigment, that panel line wash flow beautifully down your panel line. Now, depending on how glossy and smooth your surface is, it may flow straight down the panel line for miles and miles and miles. I'll tell you what, this is the first time you've seen me do brush painting, I think. I normally don't show any kind of brush painting because all you'd see is my head. Yeah, depending on the gloss, it may flow. See, I've put too much there, but you know what? I don't mind, and I'll tell you why in a bit. If it's a really, really glossy surface, it will flow beautifully down the panel line. If it's particularly not that glossy, it won't flow as well. And the reason you want a glossy surface is because on the microscopic level, a gloss varnish is a very smooth surface. A matte varnish is a very rough, orange, peely texture surface. And what you'll find is, on a rough surface, it will just kind of go and spread out, and you'll just basically colour the whole piece. On a surface like this, because it's shiny and smooth, it will flow through capillary action. Our good old friend that makes Tamiya extra thin glue work so well, it will just flow along panel lines. And this is as complicated as this gets at this point. I wasn't this messy when I was doing it yesterday, but because I'm filming it, I've got to have my head a long way away, and I'm like, I can't see that now with my old man eyes. See, the beauty of this panel line wash is I'm now using this like a normal wash. So I'm not just using it for doing my panel lines. You can just use it, it's basically just thin enamel paint. So you can just use it as a normal wash. The beauty of any modelling product is you can use it for whatever you want, in however way you see fit. If a method works for you, stick with it. But I wanted the insides of these circular areas to be a darker colour. And they're going to get full of dirt and crud and everything anyway. But I wanted them to be a darker colour, and I didn't want to do fiddly brushwork painting these areas grey because I'd have to get nice crisp edges, and then I wouldn't get a crisp edge because I'm trying to brush paint and it'd just be, yeah. So this is a lot easier. So you can see now I've just coloured that. It's shiny, but it doesn't matter. And it will gather around the nuts and little panel lines in there. And I may go back and add some more, but you can see on the other leg, the kind of effect it gave me was it just darkened the interior a bit. And that's going to get full of mud and stuff anyway. But it just gives me that nice little bit of demarcation. So, we have the stuff in our panel lines. Let us now leave that for 10 minutes. And when we come back, we'll clean up on aisle 5. Okie dokie. This has now had time to dry for a little while. I said about 10 minutes, but it's actually been more like about an hour and a half, 2 hours, because I had to go and have my tea, and then I started watching a couple of episodes of The Bill from 1998. I'm working my way through all the episodes, all of them, every single one. 1984, 2009. Yeah, I've been doing it for quite a few months. I'm getting there slowly. I'm still in the Don Beach era, so it's still kind of good at the moment. Rod Skase, what an idiot. Right, so this is now about an hour and a half, 2 hours to dry. We need to now go and clean up all these little splodges where I was being a complete buffoon, and because I couldn't see what I was doing. So this is thankfully very easy. There's different ways you can do it. Very similar to if you've seen me do a gunk wash with oil paints, where I cover it in paint and then wipe the paint off and it stays in the recesses. You can if you want. On areas like this where it's nice and flat, get yourself a piece of tissue, and this is still fine if it's like 1 or 2 hours old, the paint. Keep it flat with your finger and just wipe across the panel gap. That little hole there, I don't want to lose the paint, so you can just very gently, I'm not putting any pressure on at all, you can just wipe like that. So if you've got a nice big flat model with no sort of curvy bits or anything like that, this is just basic flat relief, so I can wipe across the surface, and I know I'm not going to pull any paint out. If you could see, that would be great. I'm not going to pull any paint out from the line. I'm really not pressing down at all. I'm just barely touching it to the surface. And you see most of it comes off. There's little bits there that are sticking. That's one way of doing this. That's the quick way. It's a nice flat model like that bit. Brilliant, no problem. For more fiddly bits, what you want to do is get a little bit of your odourless enamel thinner. Get yourself a brush. You want a piece of tissue which I will keep off shot because it will change the colour of the picture. So get your brush in the thinners, splooge. Wipe most of it off. Just dab most of it off onto the tissue to get rid of most of it, because you don't want to put a lot of thinner on here. And then all you do is quite simply, very gently, brush the paint away. I hope you can see that. It's just taking that paint away. No problem at all. Now it will be streaky. That's fine. Just wipe your brush off. Come back and do some more. And the beauty of this technique is you can make it neat and tidy or as scruffy as you want. If you want nice, clean, crisp panel lines, then just keep going till all you can see is the paint in the panel line and nothing around it. However, if you want to get a slightly faded look, so you want to get softer edges to your panel lines, then just leave a bit around the edge when you brush it away. Don't brush it away too neatly, and you'll be left with little fuzzy edges. Because if you just brush it initially like that, it just moves the paint onto the rest of the surface, so it keeps it stained. Now what I did on these parts here, where are you? There you are. It's kind of not really a panel line wash because it's not a panel line, it's like a lip, an edge. So I just put it around there. It's very messy, but what I'll do now is just go in and tidy that up a little bit. So I'll just clean up that panel line, and I'll just come along here and just run it along the edge. And I can make it as wide or as thin as I want. Is this all on camera? Yes. Out of the way. And you keep the thinner on the brush for quite a while, so you don't have to keep loading it up all the time. So if you wanted to make this effectively a panel line, you just brush away till you've got a nice neat panel line. It'll never be as crisp as a panel line because it's not a groove, it's a lip. And if you go wrong, if you mess a bit up, then don't panic. It's just like oil paints. If you get it wrong, just put some more on, let it dry for a bit, I'll go and add some more. So if I made a mess of that now and took a chunk out of that, say that grey line there, I'd just brush the rest off, come back, put some more panel line wash down, give it half an hour, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Brilliant. Bob's your uncle. Done. This bit here, this little recess, this little pit, if I try doing that, I'll just take all of it out. So I'm just going to get the tissue and just wipe it away. Bit of a stain there, but then I can take my brush and just clean that bit up. See, I've still got thinner on the brush, but I'll just load it again, just to make sure. A little bit of thinner, get most of it off on the tissue. You just want it to be a hint of dampness. And just brush that away. I'm doing this without wearing my space helmet, you know, so I'm actually seeing all this. It's quite good for me. I went a bit skew with that. And that's all you need to do. Just clean up as you go along. That's pretty much it. Now, I did say I'd give you a quick potted history of Gunpla. Now, it sounds really boring when I say that, but I'll make it super quick. If you've never built one of these, or you don't even know what they are, Gunpla is a portmanteau of the word Gundam and plastic model. Now, the thing to bear in mind is Japanese love mixing their English words together. They're portmanteaus. So it's a portmanteau of Gundam and plastic model. What is a Gundam? A Gundam is a vehicle. It's called a mobile suit. It's a vehicle, military vehicle, in which there is a pilot and he rides it around and does lots of fighting in space and on Earth and on the ground, but it's bipedal. It's got 2 legs and it walks around. So if you're in a model making rut and you're building your tanks and your planes and other things, and you just want a refreshing change, give one of these a go. They're always snap fit. They're pre-coloured, so you don't have to paint them, and they make a nice little sort of break from proper modelling. But the beauty is, if you want to do proper modelling, proper big boy model making, you can do. But if you just want something to snap together over the course of an afternoon, one lazy weekend, get yourself a Gunpla, snap it together, put the stickers on, because they usually come with stickers and dry rubs. You have to get water slides separately, and it'll give you something to do for a weekend. Right, so I'm going to crack on with this anyway. I've done the rest of the Gundam, just got this to do. I do need to use the other panel line colour. This is like a brownie colour which works perfectly for the greys and the whites, but if I did this on one of the red parts or the blue parts, like say on the torso, you wouldn't see it. And I did some on the shield. Let me just grab that. I did this panel wash on the shield, and you can see there, it's kind of not the right colour. It's not dark enough for that red. I've already done some pre-shading on there, but the panel wash is in here, panel line wash is in here, and it's not quite looking dark enough. So I'm going to go back with the blue black and do that. It hasn't arrived yet, so I'm just waiting for that to turn up so I can finish that. So we'll get that done. When we come back, I will start doing the paint chipping, and we're going to be doing painting the paint chipping, which is not something I do very often. I usually just use a knife blade, so we're going to paint the paint chipping. Epic disaster. Right, if you remember, I was going to go off and do the blue-black panel line wash, and I did. It arrived. It's really nice. You can see on some of the red parts, the shield I showed you earlier, now those panel lines are a bit more defined, a bit darker. The screw heads here came out really nice. They no longer look painted on, they look like actual big screw heads. Bearing in mind the person's about this big. So, yeah, they're quite big. So that came out really nice. They worked really well on the bottom of the feet. Nice definition to all these little raised sections here. What on these are just like pads. If this was the USS Voyager, they'd be lifeboats. If you've made that model kit, you know what I mean. And they came out really nicely on the metallic parts. These little dark areas here are all just that panel line wash touched in, then cleaned up with the cotton bud. However, I did learn a valuable lesson. This is the leg, one of the legs assembled. I don't know if I said this before, but these kits are fully articulated, so you can pose them however you want. This is the knee joint. Works really nicely. It's a simple 2-piece 90-degree turn. No problem. This is the internals of that knee. You can see there. Top there, bottom is there. That slots into a polycap. Armour pieces go around that. This was all primed, painted and gloss varnished. What I tried to do on this is, instead of doing a pin wash where I'm placing the paint on the line, I thought I'd try it as an actual, what some people call a slurry wash, which is where you just get the thinned paint, which is basically what these panel line washes are, put it all over, give it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then just rub off the excess so it stays in the panel lines, and it leaves a bit of a tint on the surrounding plastic. So I thought I'll try that on these internal metal parts. Slap the panel line wash all over it, and I actually got some in here inside this bit that you'd never normally see. Big mistake, because it turns out some of the plastic in here hadn't actually picked up any primer. So it was painted, but there was no primer. And the one word of caution with any of these Bandai kits, the Gunpla or their Star Wars kits or anything, is they do use some plastics that are exceptionally sensitive to thinners. In the presence of hot thinners, like you'll get in even oil paint thinners, acrylic thinners, enamel thinners, you put too much on, like happened in both of these legs, the internal part in here, I'll show you a picture now of what the inside of the leg looks like. This internal part in here basically just shattered into 4 pieces. My whole leg fell apart. My whole knee joint. Thankfully, I was able to separate the leg apart using the spudger that comes with the kit. It's their part separator, but I prefer the name spudger. Prise it all apart because it's snap fit. Re-glue it all or glue it all together. So I used Tamiya extra thin glue. Left it overnight to cure. It seems rock solid. Seems a little looser than it was before. Luckily, I don't think I dissolved any of the important polycaps, so it still works. When I put that leg together earlier on, it was a bit nerve-wracking because when you push this in, it's quite tight. I was worrying this would smash and shatter. It didn't. So I think I've managed to rescue it. So a lesson is learned. I know this anyway, but it's an obvious oversight on my part. If you're making a Bandai kit, especially, any kit, it's a rule anyway, but especially with the Bandai kit, prime, prime, and prime. Even stuff you're not going to see, prime it. And if you can avoid doing slurry washes, where you take a thin down paint and slap it everywhere, just don't bother. Use other methods to get the same effect. I do gunk washes on Gunpla, which is where you take neat oil paint unthinned, slap it on, and rub it off. That's fine because it's neat oil paint. I've not thinned it, so there's no excessive thinners, and it's not running into any little holes that I may not have primed because it's just on the surface, and I can rub it off. I call that a gunk wash. So prime everything, make sure it's primed if you're going to use enamels or any thin down paints, but if you can avoid using a thin down wash of any kind, do it. Apart from, obviously, for pin washing, it's fine. But that's the pin washing all done now, all the little panel lines. Verdict on these 2 panel line washes, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. They don't stink, which is great for enamels. They go in really nicely, they give you strong colours, and there's loads of other colours available. This is just 2 of them. I love those. I'm going to be using those a lot from now on. For some kits I may even not do gunk washes, and if you know my videos and you watch my channel, you'll know I love my gunk wash where I cover stuff in oil paint. I'm even having, and if you know me, you'll know this is a kind of a forbidden thought, I'm even thinking about doing a model like a Gundam like this, unweathered. I know, it's not natural for me, that. I don't do clean kits, but there's some merit to a clean Gundam. There's a really big moral dilemma in my head, so who knows. Thankfully, nothing else fell apart. It was certainly a brown trouser moment. So I'm going to reassemble everything, and let me go and do that, and then we'll start doing some paint chipping. So, back in a moment. Right, so as you can see here, I've just temporarily assembled most of it back together just to see how the panel lining came out. It's all done, looks great. Next up, we are going to be doing the paint chipping, and for that we're going to be using 3... if I can show you, 3 paints from the MIG range. So let me get him disassembled. No, disassemble! Sorry. And we will crack on with that. Okay, let's get on with this. We're going to be using several colours. We're going to be putting paint chipping all over the whole model. So the white, the blue, the yellow, the red and the dark grey areas. I've broken the kit down again to make it more manageable. What we're going to be using is 3 ammo colours. We're going to be using MIG 191, which is steel. We're going to be using MIG 043, which is rust, and we're going to use MIG 212, which is silver grey. Now for the reds, yellows and blues, we're going to use silver grey. For the whites, we're going to use the rusty colour, and for the dark areas like the backpack and the dark grey, we're going to use the steel just to break things up a little bit. That's a metallic colour. We're also going to use some Tamiya paints on this one. What we're going to do is try and replicate what you see in real life. Look at any paint chips on a digger or a JCB or any kind of industrial equipment. It's not just paint and then bare metal or paint and rust. What you'll often have is paint and then the rust or the metal and a little bit of a line in between where it's paint that wasn't on the surface that's been exposed, and this is cleaner than the paint on this side because this has been exposed to rust and dirt and weather and all kinds of schmutz. This is often a bit cleaner. You don't see it all the time. You don't have to do this. And this is going a bit further into detail than the book in Combat says, but I'm going to do the little halo effect just to make things a bit more detailed and interesting. So we're going to take this red part and add the initial faded chipping, which is what I've just decided to call it. I've got myself some Tamiya flat red, and I've added into this some Tamiya flat white. And we shall get our superfine brush, get a small amount of the paint. You can see my hands are shaking here actually, and it's going to be handy that. Take some of the paint. You can do it from the lid with Tamiya paints. It's going to be thin enough. It might gunk up after a few minutes, so you have to put the lid back on and shake it again. Twist the brush to keep the point. And all I'm going to do is quite literally get my shaky hand, and I'm just going to apply tiny dots of it
along the edge. And it doesn't matter if it's messy or where my hand goes, because that's the effect I want. I want it to look completely random. Now it looks really bright and pink, but the important thing to remember is you're going to be painting over a lot of this with the other colours. And the trick is, like I say, to keep it random. Go heavier in some areas than others. Try and stick to edges, corners where there'd be a lot of traffic, so where a lot of things would come into contact with it. Let's put one, a bigger one here. Knocking the camera, thank you. Corners, edges where there's joints or machinery moving. Edges like this on the bottom of the foot, where you're going to see the ground coming into contact. And all we're doing is we're just adding these little bits. Okay, so that's going to do for that part. So we put loads of chips on there. I'll do as well some little scratches, because you get scratches. If your brush is fine enough, you can get some really nice little scrapes and scratches. If you're clever, you can do little radial things like that, so it looks like something's hit here and pinged off. Just play with it, have fun, keep it completely random as best you can, and don't think about it too much. You can do as much or as little as you want, and it will take you a while. It's quite a long and tedious process, and it is really hard to keep it random. A little bit around this edge here. So that's that part. So let me go away and do the rest of this red part of the foot, and then we'll put on the next colour. So, back in a moment. Right, so I've been all around the red parts of the foot, and as you can see now I've done a mixture of splotches and a few little scratches here and there. The front of the foot here, where it's digging into the ground, I've kind of done some upward scratches. I've tried to follow really a sort of semi-logical pattern. I've done underneath as well, which looks really messy, but bearing in mind this is in constant contact with the floor. I've tried to use some logic so that here on the front of the foot it's going to be mostly going that way, so my scrapes go from front to back, and on the back where he's digging his heel in, you've got it going from the back to towards the front. I've not done too much in here because this is recessed anyway, and I've tried to stick to edges. This part of the foot here is recessed from these pads, so I've done a bit less there, and this is all going to be covered up with loads of other stuff anyway, so I'm not too bothered that it looks really harsh and bright. So what's the next step? Well, the next step is to get our silver grey, MiG 212, give it a darn good shake. Now this ammo paint is actually thinner than the Tamiya paint, so you don't have to thin it so much or thin it at all. I'm going to use this bit of plastic cotton bud lid as a palette. Take a few drops of that, and we're going to do exactly the same as we've just done. But what we are going to do is just paint this inside these pink bits. Basically, we want to suggest that this is where the fresh underneath paint has been exposed, and then underneath that is the metal, or the grey, whatever this colour is supposed to be. Let's call it space metal. So do the same as before. Get a little bit of paint on the brush, twist it to get a fine point, and all we're going to do is quite simply do exactly the same again, but we're going to paint inside the pink, and we're going to go up to the edges. And again, we're not going to think about it, not going to use our brains. We're going to go into autopilot, and we're just going to go inside the pink bits. And again, this may look really quite stark. It's almost like white against red. But once you've put the following, once we get to the point of doing tints and mud and filters and other things, it's going to look much more blended. So I will now go away and use this technique on the rest of the Gundam. It's probably going to take me a good, I don't know, a couple of days just to do everything. I'm going to use exactly the same technique on the rest of it. I've just clean my brush off. I'm not going to do this on the metallics. That's me cleaning my brush. Not going to use this on the metallics because they're going to stay metallic. We are going to do exactly the same on the dark greys. The only other thing I need to show you in a moment is using a sponge for the whites. So let me go and get a piece of sponge set up ready, and we'll show you what we're going to do on the whites. So I'll finish off this foot and I'll go and do the sponge thing. Back in a moment. Okie dokie, right, been over with the silver grey, and as you can see it's looking much more chipped and battered now. Now again, as I said before, don't worry that it looks really obvious, because there's going to be so much weathering on top of this later that it's going to all blend in and become really subtle. And I am doing more on the feet than I would be anywhere else on the mobile suit, purely because the feet's the bits that come in contact with the ground, so they'll get more wear and tear. That's my logic, and I'm sticking to it. So what's next? Well, I'm not going to do anything on the foot here, specifically with this next technique, apart from maybe on the ankle guard. But what I'm going to do next is some sponging. So let me just get the next part, which is yon leg. What I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be doing lots of little chipping like I did with the foot, using rust brown, no, shadow rust even, MiG-43. Again, on edges and things like that. A bit more subtle on the legs because they're further up than the feet. But I also want to put some little splattery bits, some little chips and splatters of the rust colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my rust brown. I'm going to get a small piece of the sponge. This is just a bog standard piece of Brillo sponge you get in your kitchen. I've taken the scruffy Brillo piece off, you can see there. And all we're going to be doing is doing some very subtle little bits here and there. Now the book suggests the knees, so I'm going to do it on the knees, but just in a couple of other places, just to get a kind of, well, you'll see the effect when it's done. It's better to do it than explain it. So what do I need? I'm going to get, now the white balance is going to go everywhere, so I do apologise. Piece of tissue, something to put your paint on. We're basically going to dry brush using sponge, and you'll see the effect. So I'll get some of the paint. You might get through quite a bit of paint doing this. Get your sponge. I've already tugged away at little bits of the sponge like that, just to pull little bits off, and trust me, it goes everywhere. Get the rough side. Dip it in your paint. Squidge. Now I'm going to take most of that paint back off on the tissue, because I don't want to make a big sponge shape, a big blob. I want to make a sort of spotted little dotty shape. So I want to get most of that paint back off again. And what you're looking to do here is really subtle effect. Okay, and all I'm going to do is quite simply apply this, just gently, in various places. And you might not even see this on camera, and I always say that, and you always can. But what you're going to get is this kind of speckly effect, like that. If you can see that. I'm going to do it down the bottom of the foot as well, bottom of the leg even, just to get some real dirt showing. Now the only reason I'm going to be using the rust brown on the legs is A, because it says to in the book, but also when you've got something that's painted white or a very light colour, it's hard to do any kind of chipping using white or similar colours because it's not going to show up. So it's kind of logical. You're going to have to get creative. I'm just doing this here and there, various places, do around this joint here. Get some more paint because I'm getting a bit low. You will get through quite a fair bit of paint doing this. But as you can see, it's not a fast process. I mean, it's not a slow process even. It's fairly speedy. Try and keep it random if you can. Oops. If you want to, you can drag the sponge, but I'm not going to do that. Get some dirt in there. Around this bit here. Try not to get it on the metallic parts at this point, because I don't want this particular part of weathering on there. Then we'll have some here. Just go wherever you want. And truth be told, once the whole model is finished, you probably won't even see most of this anyway. But you'll know it's there, and that's the trick with any model making. A lot of this is you'll never see, or most people will never see half the stuff you do. But you'll know it's there. And that's all I want to do with the sponge, just little bits like that. I may do a little bit on the arm, and I'll obviously go and do the rest of the leg. So I'll go and do a bit of that, And then once I've finished that, in the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'll go around with the Shadow Rust, and I'll do similar chipping that I've done on the foot, on the leg here, but I'll do a bit less. I'll just stick to maybe corners and edges and do a bit less. So let me go and do that, and when we come back I'll show you the finished thing, and then it'll be on to the next episode then, when we'll carry on with the next step. So let me go and finish this chipping on the rest of the whole mobile suit, which should take me a couple of days, or a few seconds in your time, and we'll see how it comes out. So, back in a moment.
Alright, so that's all the chipping done. Not focusing on the gun or the shield yet, so they've not been done. Just focusing on the mobile suit itself. Everything's disassembled. I've given it a coat of matte varnish, matte Humbrol 49 rattle can varnish, just in preparation for the next load of stuff. But I'll give you a quick squiz. You can see here on the whites and greys, we just went for a single stage of the rust colour, the Shadow Rust. No secondary colour for lighter paint, just the Shadow Rust, and it came out quite nice, I think. Kept it nice and subtle, just around panel lines. Bit more at the bottom, because that's where we're going to get more wear and tear near the feet. And I went to town on here, which I'm really pleased with. That came out really looking like your old car that's got rust patches, or a JCB or something. It's mixed with the sponged on splatter. It just gives it that nice sort of, I don't know, well, rust chipped effect, I suppose. But the browns come out really nice, and it works really nice on the white parts, as this one, for example. You can see here, I just tried to stick to edges and keep it subtle. I didn't do loads of splats in the middle of nowhere. Did a few, but not loads. Hopefully you can see all that. It's in focus. I did do some chipping on the torso, obviously, like I said I would. I did a double colour one on there with light blue, and then the steel grey colour, silver grey colour even. Now it went a bit wrong, because I got carried away, and I was having fun, and I just ended up giving it chicken pox. I was just going to stick to panel lines, like edges and lines, like I did on the other pieces, but it just went horribly wrong. So it's all gone a bit fussy on there, but I can live with it. It'll fade away when I do the next load of weathering anyway. And I didn't do anything on the red, because Mick Jimenez doesn't do anything on the red in his book. In the book, it doesn't show him doing that. So, I mean, I would have done, but I'm following what he's doing. So, yeah, it doesn't do anything, so it'll work. So, in my mind, this is the same kind of paint they put on Japanese World War II fighter planes, so it chips off dead easily, and therefore it looks like it's got chickenpox, and that's in my mind, and it works, and I'm sticking to it. But we'll have fun with that anyway. Did some of the chipping on the backpack as well, with the steel. Now, I have to admit, Mick Jimenez has this absolute amazing talent for making chipping look realistic and just look right. I haven't quite got that talent yet, because I've not done much brush chipping, so I need to work on that. It's good, but it's not quite as natural and flowy as his. It's a bit more fussy, so yeah. So anyway, so that's going to do it for this episode. Join us for the next one, when we'll start using the Ammo of Mig streaking and filtering products, just to start making all these disparate colours a more unified whole. And start the process. We've done the paint chipping, but now we're going to start the process of adding, you know, the grime and the dust and the streaks and the filth and the dirt and the filth and the dirty, filthy, dirty, grimy, filthy, dirty, filthy little... Ooh! Just calm down. Calm down. Those of you who know me will know I don't do clean models. I love my filthy, dirty models. And this is going to be so filthy. You're going to love it. So, calm down now. Got carried away there, like I did with the torso. So anyway, thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you to my good friends at emodels.co.uk. Absolutely brilliant online store. I'd say the best UK model store online. They have an enormous range of stuff, anything from, you know, glue to paint to kits to spray booths, airbrushes, anything you need, they've got it. And as I always say, if they ain't got it, you don't need it. Go along to their Facebook page as well, facebook.com/eModelsLTD. Great little community. Hang out with idiots like me and Tony and Ted, and just post up pictures of your work and see work from other people. It's a great little place. And last of all, check out my stuff. I post up, you know, shots of my work and things on my website, modelmaking.guru, and I'm also on YouTube. It's just Model Making Guru on YouTube. So check out my stuff as well. But thank you to all of you watching, either on my channel or eModels channel, and stay tuned. This will go up live on eModels channel first. It'll go up on my channel later. So subscribe to both, because you obviously want to watch this. But subscribe to eModels, because they've also got builds from Tony, from Ted. Ted's doing his massive. Oof, yes, I've gone all Spanish. Ted's doing his massive tank, which is the size of basically Wales, and he's looking fantastic. He's getting to the painting stage now. And Tony's just building his, well, he's finished his Yami-Ha, as he calls it, and now he's working on the figure whose name I can't remember. Go and check them all out. Subscribe to everything. Just subscribe to all the things. All of them. Right, I'm going to go now, because it's gone on really long, this. So, catch up for the next one. Adios, amoebas! And it also, if you didn't